Okay, I'm ready to prime the roof. Got the sunroof all prepped out here. Got a little bit of a fill on this corner here I had to do. The rest of it was just a few paint chips. Wanted to make sure I got down past the E-coat down into any rust that was formed, and there was a little bit in each one, so I like to get all that off. I'll epoxy that whole thing most likely if I have enough left, but I'm going to start up here. I went ahead and just stripped the whole front edge just because there were several chips, and if you start putting a bunch of feather edges into the front there in one area, doesn't really have to be the front, but you start doing a lot of these type feather edges, you're going to have ripples all down the panel. So I just went ahead and stripped it, since that's the most visible part of the roof where it slopes down. I had one chip here, the rest of these mainly were just chips. Had one slight depression right there I had to fill just to get that level that direction. So I'll start on the roof to make sure I have enough epoxy to do everything, and then I'll use the rest of what I have over here. If I got enough left, I'll probably just cover the whole thing. Okay, I might have had enough to go over this whole thing, but I didn't want to be in the middle of it and run out, so I hit what I had to and left it. This has been on here for about, I don't know, 10 minutes. It's still kind of halfway glossy in a few places where it's thick, but really just need it on the metal. And I'll bring the rest of the primer down a couple inches away from this tape so they don't get a hard line in it. But I feathered out the primer I did on the quarter panels, and now I'm just going to overlap my primer into that. So this is all sanded. Instead of trying to prime the entire body shell at once, this is how I do it normally when I've got roof and quarters that are continuous like this. And I'm going to probably go ahead and put 3 coats so that I can block this roof out. it wasn't really wavy, but it had a little bit of a, not really dense or anything, but kind of just a pattern in the roof for some reason, almost like it's showing the roof structure or something. But I'm gonna block it out. That'll give me something to block. Front, I don't really need that much. I just need something to sand, but I may just go ahead and do 3 coats just on the back half. But I'll see how it lays down, what it looks like when I get the primer on, and then I can decide if I need any more. There's actually a small, maybe you can see this, there's a small tiny ding right there. When I got the rust out of that, I didn't see that it was lower. I probably would have put a little bit of filler in there, but I think I can get enough primer on the roof if I do 3 coats to be able to fill that and block it out. And I only ran epoxy down this ridge because I cut through that peak. And I did that on purpose just because I want to make sure I got through that edge, because this roof had been blended. The quarters had been blended up once before. I want to make sure that I got all the way to the bare steel on that peak right there, so nothing would end up peeling later. I'll give this about another 45 minutes to an hour. I got to go run to parts store, grab something, come back and prime it. Okay, I've just washed the underside of the hood, got it nice and clean. Going through just kind of assessing what I've got here. All of this in here was foam insulation that's just kind of gotten really dry and brittle, so I've taken all that out. This will get covered back up with something. Got some seam sealer here that's just starting to crack a little. Instead of going through and stripping all of it out, I'm just going to go through here and wipe more in the cracks. The hood's in really good shape. The only rust I found under here is a couple little spots right there, which I can blast. And that's about it. But I'm going to go through and prep it for paint. Then I'll go around and add seam sealer to these cracks just to smooth them out. It'll seal it off and also look better. And then this back here stays black. You can see where they added the black after the gold was done. So all I really need to do is put some blue along the edges, around the front, and then I'll come back and I'll just mask it like along here and just spray some more black over this. I'm going to feather out all this where it's kind of peeled off, and I'll just try to get a better transition there. Maybe take all the black off in this section and just reshoot that with some trim black aerosol. Alright, seam sealer's done. Just letting it cure up while I take lunch. I'll come back and get the blue on the sides and the front. And back here, I'll come back after that's dry and I'll mask off this section right here on each side. Coat this black. Okay, I'm ready to paint. Instead of using adhesion promoter, I'm going to start with this easy coat. This will actually match this original e-coat color. Not that I really care about matching the e-coat color, I just want to get this all in one uniform color and use this as a sealer. And since this is direct to metal, all these places where I've got cut throughs to metal, like on these corners, and there's a couple places over here that I sandblasted, this can go directly over that. That'll give me a uniform color to start the base coat with, and I won't have to put as much on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a coat of this, probably 2 medium coats of this on here, just all the way around where I'm gonna do the blue, and let that flash off for it's probably 15-20 minutes. It looks like dry time is flash time 5 to 10 between coats, and then dry time's 30. So give it about 30 minutes, and I'll get some blue on it. And then once all that's dry, I can mask off the blue and shoot the black back here. But I won't need this back here really in the back. Okay, this is 2 medium coats of the easy coat. There's a little texture in it, but it looks exactly like e-coat when you get it wet, like right down in here in this valley. I wasn't really trying to get it wet, just trying to get it covered, but that it's cold out here, so I'm trying to do it in thin coats. But it mimics e-coat really well if you need to leave it like that. Look right in there. I'm gonna get some blue mixed up in a few minutes. I'm gonna let this flash, and then once the blue's on here, I can pull all the paper, and then we can do the black in the back. Okay, I've moved on to the tail panel. I forgot to give you a shot of the body work. It was just one little ding right here and one up here, just from probably from storage or shipping. Basically just sanded back into my primer that I'd done on the quarters. I'm going to overlap the primer for this panel into the quarter primer, just like I did on the roof. So this was up into here, sanded it back, primed over into that. So this area right in here is overlap primer, but it's all sanded, so I can feather this roof primer into the quarter, and then I can paint it all together. So this will sit for about 45 minutes. And I'll put a couple coats of high build primer on it just so that I've got something over the E-coat. You either want to seal or prime E-coat. You don't want to paint directly on it. Mostly because you don't have any cushion there. Like on the front end, you don't have any cushion for rock chips or anything like that, but you also want to cover that E-coat. From what I understand, UV can even penetrate through the paint and cause rust into the steel through the E-coat. You don't have anything sealing it, so if I prime this, I can sand it, and that way I can paint the tail panel with the rest of the body shell. I won't have to seal the back end, or I would have to seal it and wait, then do the base coat. So I'm going to go ahead and just prime it and sand it with the rest of the car. And I'll go straight to base coat when I get the car masked off. Alright, I'm about ready to put some color on the back end of this car underneath, at least. I've got some rocker guard reapplied here. I've got to fill in a little bit of a gap here between the original and what I put on. I'm going to put some blue all around the black, or excuse me, the back of it, and wrap it around into here, and then put some under here, and just overlap my rocker guard with blue, and then I'll put black undercoating under here. It'll cover a lot better. There's no point in wasting the base coat under there. Same thing over here. I don't have any holes over here. Just gotta fill in that one tiny spot over there on the other side. I'm gonna get some blue mixed up. Go ahead and start this, and then I'll fill that hole right before I undercoat it. Okay, got 2 thick coats of blue on the back. I just taped it off to this corner here. I could have blown the blue up over this, but I didn't want to cover up my guide coat. And I can't just wipe it off with thinner because then I'll take my guide coat back off. This is black undercoating. It's just got one medium coat or so just to turn it black. Basically, it's not really doing a whole lot. The rocker guard's there to take care of the stone chips. And that's just to color it black and give it that little extra texture. You see that texture here. Most of that texture is in the rocker guard. Now I can rehang the exhaust and get that back up next to the body. I had to leave this down. It should be up right near the body there. Put the rubber back on it and start blocking the body down. Okay, I'm about halfway done blocking the body shell. The roof I blocked with 180 until I got rid of the guide coat. Then I came back with, once it was flat with that, I just had to come back with a DA and flatten out or take out all the scratches. And I went around the edges and wet sanded with 400 just to get all this that I had in the window channels flattened out just by hand. All around these edges, all down here by hand. I've got a few cut throughs like this that I'll probably spot seal because I don't want to go down to that single stage with base coat. It may wrinkle. Roof is completely done. Got in this channel done. So I'm working my way from the front towards the back so I don't miss anything. I've come down here, I blocked these areas with 180, then came back and took it out with 400, same as the roof. And also hit the bodywork areas like down here where I had welded. Needed to get a little bit of this ripple out. This is all 180, re-guide coated that. So that's kind of got the panel flat, and then I'll just take the scratches out with 400. Same thing over here. I blocked this entire section with 180, and also this bottom piece where this main part of this body work in here was done. I hit this spot here and here where I had 2 little dings with 180, got that started. I'll put some more guide coat over that. I tried white primer back here to see if it's easier to see than black guide coat on the dark gray. So I may start doing that if I need to. I'm just trying to experiment with that. There was a little bit of body filler here. Started that. And this joint was here, so I've already got that with 180. So I re-guide coated all of this. And you can see I actually started to sand this 400 to try to start getting this out. So all this will get blocked again with 400 to make sure it's nice and flat, and then I'll hit it with a D8 at the very end to get the straight line scratches out. So once I get all this sanded, I'll just have to give it a good wipe down so my tape will stick to everything where it needs to, and then I'll mask it off and then wipe it down really well before I paint it. So essentially I'm down to about right here on both sides, and then I'll just have to rework both quarter panels with 400, and then I need to go across here and just sand this smooth. I'm going to shoot that with it while the trunk lid's out of the way, so I'll be one continuous coat. Okay, ready to paint. Started on this about 8:30, getting everything blocked out on the quarters. It is 6 o'clock now. Go ahead and spray it while humidity is a little bit lower than it will be tomorrow. It's going to rain all day, run the humidity all the way up tomorrow. Go ahead and knock it out now. I finished the roof and quarters out where I could get the DA in 600 grit. I probably didn't get all the 400 out, but that'll help me get scratches covered a little bit faster since I'm not going to seal this. I am going to spot seal places like down here where I've got some cut throughs, but that's it. I'm not going to seal the car. Go straight to base coat after that, and 3 coats of that and 3 coats of clear. Okay, so next morning, let this thing dry overnight. I got done around 9:30. Didn't want to risk damaging any of it, pulling plastic off at night. Right after I sprayed it, I had 3 coats, so it stayed wet for a while. Stayed fairly clean. I'll take a little bit of dust out, not very much though. Finish is perfectly fine to leave it like this, but we're going to get it completely slicked out. Turned out nice. Got one little sag in the clear over here on this body line where the clear likes to puddle. I got one little one right here to take out, just barely there, but if you don't occasionally get something like that, you're not getting it wet enough. You go ahead and get all this plastic pulled off. Let this thing dry a few more days before I bother trying to tape on it and do the doors. Need to get it out in the sun. It's rained all night and it's going to rain most of today, so I'm going to have to wait a little while to get it out in the sun. Okay, now that the shell of the car is done, I'm going to go ahead and trim out the fenders, so when I put these on here, I've got coverage in here already, so I don't have to worry about getting in here after they're on the car, not as much. I'm going to go ahead and get everything at least in blue, and when I put the bolts through, I bolt it on the car, I'll come back, I'll tape it back in here for the paint job, and I'll put just another coat of blue over this so that the bolts will get covered as well. And I'm going to go in here. This will give me access to this wheel lip that I've primed and sealed, so I can get blue over this, which would be very difficult to do on the car. And I'll go ahead and hit these edges here so I don't have to put as much on when I actually do the outside of it. But you can see this is still in guide coat, so I'll block out the front doors in this area first so that the fender's out of the way before I mount these, and then I'll get these on the car and I'll block them out on the car so that they can't flex at all when I block it and change shape after I get it on the car. So they'll be fixed in position. Same thing here. So got to get this one blocked, but I'll do the front doors first and then I'll mount the fenders. So I got plenty of access to the front edge of the door. I'm going to get some sealer on these bare metal areas along in here. This one had a little bit more. I had to go through the paint that was there. There was something on it I couldn't dissolve away with thinner, so I had to sand it off. So I'm going to seal this and just get color around these edges. Okay, I've got the blue in the fender jams here, and I didn't add any hardener to the base coat, so the next coat that I put on with the hardener in it will stick to this without having to sand it. That'll cover the bolts so it looked like they weren't ever removed. Got the inner side of the wheel lip there, but I won't be able to reach when it's on. I did the back side. So I'll get these bolted on. Went ahead and block sanded a little bit of the front of the doors, that way the block can run off the door and I don't have to worry about the fender being in the way. Same thing over here. And I'll have to spot seal it where I've cut through little spots that are on these corners, but I'm gonna try to avoid sealing the parts when I paint it. That way I don't have to wait on it and use the material, and it'll be just like I did the body. Let me get these fenders put on, and that way I can leave those off the stand there. I need to free it up for another part I've got to do. Okay, ready to do these three parts: the sunroof panel, fuel door, and the trunk lid. I'm doing the fuel door separately so that I can get all the way into this edge, and I can get all the way into the inside of the pocket on the car, so we better do that with it off. I'm gonna have to spot seal just a couple places, probably this back edge where I've got a little bit of a cut through there, right there, so I don't have any metal exposed to UV if I don't put any sealer over it. Here, and then I've got one spot right here where I cut through to the original blue. I'm going to just seal over that ever so lightly, just so that you can't possibly get to the original paint. The base coat can, hopefully. And that's really all the sealer I'm going to do. I'm trying to keep everything just in sanded primer. I'll get a lot slicker finish. Got an issue with my tripod, so I'm just going to show you before and after here on these. Alright, fenders are back on. Just got these blocked out. Since this car is so flat down the sides, I've started using this piece of polycarbonate I bought. This is 2 feet long, so I can just about get the entire door in one angled stroke like this, back and forth. So I went ahead and blocked the doors with it and reprimed those. And I waited to do the fenders until I got them back on the car so they would be in their installed position, because they have to be tightened down and they start to roll a little bit on the inside, and I don't want to block it without it in its mounted position. So I'm going to reprime these. I'll just put 2 coats on it. They don't really need primer except for the cut throughs, and to make sure I don't have any 180 left in it. I blocked that with 180 if you didn't see. So that'll give me something to sand. This has 2 coats on it, and I'll just run a DA across that, knock the texture off, and it'll be flat. Same thing here once I get it primed. And I'll take this same block and do, across the hood. There's a little bit of flex to it, but not much. But it is allowing me to get this thing dead flat. And I'll give you a shot of that with some waxing grease remover here, just to see how straight it's getting it. You can see it's nice and straight. I used it in this area, but I had to turn it sideways to fit it in here. I'm probably going to get another piece of this and cut it down to have like an 18-inch piece, a 12-inch piece, and maybe do a 6 or 8-inch piece. I need to get some that are a little narrower, maybe 1 inch, but I bought this because it will fit 2 1/4 roll of blocking paper, and I can roll the 1/8 inch on either side over the edge, and I can use that corner. Like right down in here, I can block right down in that into that recess with that edge. If I've had the 2 1/4 block that you can buy, you'd have the paper right up to the edge. You wouldn't be able to do that as easily. I'm going to paint these 6 panels, the doors and the fenders, next, and I'll pull the hood off before I do that, and I'll paint it while it's off and then set it back on. That'll have the car completely done. Then I just need to buff out the sunroof, get it back into the car, and then I'll buff the rest of the car after that, and then I'll start on all the trim pieces. Okay, we're all sanded out. I'm going to do the tops of the doors separately from the rest, just so I have just down the side the spray all at one time on each side, and that way I can get into the jam here. Since I had to prime into here, I'll just prop the doors open and paint just around the door frame here. That'll allow me to get into this part where I wouldn't be able to get any color on the back door. And I'll go ahead and spray some color right in here, so that way when I do the outside, I'll only need the paint on the outside edge here, and the rest will be done. I've just wiped it down to get all the sand and sludge off. Did all this dry actually this time. So the next thing will be the door frame or the window frames, and then once those are dry, I'll mask off the doors and fenders with the hood off again, and be able to get a little more paint down in here over the bolts. So that'll be the next thing. Okay, the doors and fenders are ready to go. I'm going to wrap the paint around the edges just to make sure I don't have an edge there where the molding is going to sit. I want the paint to go all the way down the edge of the door, so we'll see it from the back edge that it's solid coat. Now the tops of the doors are done. I did those the other day. I just wanted to be able to mask this all off and be able to do all of it in one long shot here. I don't have to worry about the door frames. And that way I can get paint inside the jams on the frames too. I'm going to get this thing wiped down 2 or 3 times. Get it set up to spot in some sealer where I've cut through in a couple of places, and that's all the sealer I'm going to use. Go straight to base coat after that. All right, I already did the same thing on the other side, so I'll get 2 more coats of the blue, and then I'll get about an hour, maybe hour flash time, and get 3 coats of clear on it. All right, it's all done. Wasn't able to film the clear coat going on, but this is about 15 or 20 minutes after the 3rd coat. And that last coat I put on just barely wet, just to build up the clear. I'm just going to basically sand this last coat flat anyway. So there's a little more texture to it than there was in the 2nd coat. It's more of a factory finish now, but that's going to get flattened out. Main thing is you don't want to run it. That 3rd coat, I gave it about 20 minutes after the 2nd before I put this on here, but I made sure I put it on thin. Last thing you want to do is run it. I don't see any, so I think we're good. I'm gonna let it sit here overnight. Temperature finally came up. It was down in the teens last week, so went ahead and did this today. Give it overnight, and I'll come back and pull this plastic off tomorrow. Make sure I don't mess anything up pulling it.